Amateur Traveler is in its 20th year now, but can you imagine if I had people on the show who had never been to the destination but had just read about it or seen a movie about it? That wouldn't make any sense at all, and you wouldn't listen. We all know how important it is to receive advice from people who know a destination to get the most authentic local experience. And a great option for experiencing this is Explore Worldwide and their authentic small group adventures, led by local tour leaders, perfect for solo travelers who want to meet like minded people with a desire for adventure. I'm often an independent traveler, but two of my last three trips were with small group tours because they organize everything and it's a lot easier. If you want to recreate the tour I did to Malta, they have a Malta and Gozo Discovery Tour. I'm intrigued by one of their tours called A Taste of Sicily. The company again is Explore Worldwide, and visit exploreworldwide.com to learn more. And thanks to Explore Worldwide for sponsoring this episode of Amateur Traveler. The nights are long, the days are short, and the weather is chilly to downright cold, depending on where you are. It's a good time to slip into a Quince iconic Mongolian cashmere sweaters, which start at only $50. You can treat yourself to everyday luxury at an affordable price with Quince. If you really want to dive into luxury, you can check out their leather handbags, washable silk shirts, and European linen sheet sets. Whatever you're looking for at Quince, all the prices are 50 to 80% less than similar brands, and they do that by partnering directly with top factories and cutting out the middleman. They only work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing processes. And of course, they use premium fabrics and finishes for that luxury feel in every piece. But you've already heard me rave about my Quince travel pants. Treat yourself this winter without the luxury price tag. Go to quince.com/traveler for 365-day returns plus free shipping on your order. That's QUINCE.com/traveler to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/traveler. And thanks to Quince for sponsoring this episode of Amateur Traveler.
I got my bags packed, I'm on a roll. I'm heading out there, and I'm ready to go. I'm looking real good in my passport photo.
Amateur Traveler, episode 201. Today, the Amateur Traveler talks about rice terraces, white sand beaches, and dried mangoes as we go to the Philippines.
Got to sit in one more cafe. I know that I should be heading home, but maybe not today.
Welcome to the Amateur Traveler. I'm your host, Chris Christensen. Before we get into today's interview, I do have three news stories for you. The first one is if you're interested in history and nuclear power, you can tour one of the first nuclear power plants in the world, the one that donated 2/3 of the plutonium to the first plutonium bomb, and I hear it's getting glowing reviews. The U.S. government advises that when you go to China, you should throw away your mobile phone and possibly your computer when you get home because they're afraid that people are spying on businessmen traveling to China. Yeah, that's creepy. Matt Cutts reported on his blog that when his frequent flyer miles on U.S. Airways were expiring, he decided to change them into magazines, and we've done this often, so he signed up for 8 different magazines, and 8 different times he was told that there was a, quote, overwhelming response, and that the title wasn't available. Now, Matt Cutts, you may not know, is an SEO or search engine optimization expert for Google, and I think he may be searching for a different airline. For information on for links to those news stories and others, check out the show notes at amateurtraveler.com. Before we get into this week's interview, I'm going to start it with a bit of an apology. This was recorded over a phone call to the Philippines, and when we're doing the long-distance phone calls, we sometimes don't get a really great connection, so the sound quality is not quite as good as what you're used to from the Amateur Traveler, but I've done the best I can with what we got. I'd like to welcome to the show Ivan Hernares, who is coming to us from the Philippines to talk about his country. Ivan, welcome to the show.
Hi, Chris. Thank you very much for having me.
And Ivan was recommended to me. We haven't met before, and I don't think Ivan has listened to the show before, by Gary from Everything Everywhere, who I'm doing This Weekend Travel with now, as one of the best travel bloggers in the Philippines. In fact, I think you recently won an award for your blog, and so congratulations
that was
on
in
that.
2007. Yeah, the best travel blog in the Philippines for that year.
So you are the person that we should talk to if we're going to come to the Philippines and we had, say, a week to 2 weeks. What would you recommend? What sort of itinerary would make sense in that kind of time period?
It actually depends on your interest, but of course I would suggest, visiting Manila and then going down south to the Visayas, to Cebu, Bohol, and of course to the island of Palawan. They have really, really great beaches. And actually the Visayas is a place where you get to experience the Philippines a lot. And up north, you also have the rice terraces. It's actually nice to make 1 or 2 week itineraries in the Philippines. There's so much to see and do, and it's very unique.
Okay, so let's start with that. You have us starting in Manila, and we're probably flying into Manila if we're flying internationally anyway. What should we stop and make sure that we see about Manila?
Yeah, Manila is the capital city of the Philippines. Of course, you have the walled city of Intramuros, you have Rizal Park, but I do suggest that if you're in Manila, you go on one of the walking tours. There are actually 2 guides who are very popular. In fact, they're recommended by travel guidebooks. One does a really good tour of Intramuros. This is the old walled city built during the Spanish colonial period. However, much of it was destroyed during the Second World War, so what you see is actually a leftover of the devastation that happened then, but it's still beautiful. They have a lot of good churches there. Another guide is Ivan Hernares. You can visit his website at oldmanilawalks.com. He does a really good walking tour, food tour of Binondo, which is our local Chinatown. There's a lot of things you'll see there, and you'll get to taste a lot of the local delicacies, even those which are sold in hole-in-the-wall establishments.
Okay.
Yeah, that's Manila. Of course, if you're a mall person, we have some of the biggest malls in the world. In fact, 3 of the top 10 biggest malls in the world can be found in Manila.
Oh, really? I did not know that.
Yep, that's right.
What's going to surprise me when I come to Manila? What's unique about Manila?
Well, Manila is a unique mix of East and West. You have the local Asian flavor, but at the same time, you have to remember that we were a colony of both Spain and the United States, so you see a lot of Spanish and American influence in the city. And the people are very warm, and as I mentioned, there's so much character, especially if you do explore Manila. You get to see a lot of the different old houses, which are, of course, built during the different colonial periods, and you'll get to see unique transportation. There are jeepneys, but of course, right now they've become a nuisance because they, in a way, cause traffic.
Now, you mentioned the jeepneys. Let's not assume that everybody has the same picture that I just got in my head when you said that. Can you describe what a jeepney is?
The jeepney is actually a result of Filipino ingenuity after the Second World War. The Americans left a lot of jeeps, military jeeps. So what they did was they modified them. They lengthened the jeeps. They're actually maybe twice the length of the usual jeep, which you see. They added a lot of decorations, metal horses. They put some stickers and all these colors. So it's an art form. The jeepney is also a very important means of transportation in the city. Basically, it takes you to the little nooks and crannies, something like a door-to-door public transportation system. It's actually a nuisance at times because the jeep will just stop anywhere, and there's really no jeepney stop. So if you see a jeep, you can just ask the jeep to stop and pick you up. It's a major source of public transport in the Philippines.
Okay. And any particular place you would recommend somebody stay in Manila?
Yeah, in Manila, if you're a backpacker, there are a lot of cheap budget accommodations in the Malate area. I actually have it in my blog, a list of different backpack accommodations there in Malate.
Okay. Tourists come to Manila, and they're carrying probably their Lonely Planet guidebook or some other guidebook. What is the guidebook telling them to do that you just wish people would stop going to, and what is that missing? What should they do instead?
The guidebooks would, of course, bring you to all these touristy places like Intramuros, but after you do Intramuros, there's still more to Manila. That's why I do suggest that you visit Binondo, Chinatown, you visit the Escolta area, you can explore Santa Cruz. There are a lot of really, really good restaurants in the area which I feel should be given a second look. And Malate is actually the popular place right now because it's where all the backpackers are. But there's so much to Manila than all that.
Could I get you to go into a little more detail with why Santa Cruz and why the different areas I mentioned? Great.
The guidebooks, of course, would recommend everyone to visit Intramuros and maybe the National Museum and all that. But of course, it's worth visiting. You have to visit it at least half a day. But it would be nice to explore the real Manila. Manila, which isn't, how do I say it, cosmetified, something like that. Get to see the real thing if you go to Binondo, you go to Santa Cruz. This is the Chinatown area.
Okay.
You get to explore the different food establishment, hole in the wall if you may. There's actually a lot of places where you can eat different kinds of food in the Binondo area. I really recommend that you maybe one whole day and make sure that you're up to it, your stomach is up to it. Just eat and eat and eat and eat and eat.
And what should we not miss? So you say we're eating in that area. We're eating what?
You should try the Dongbei dumplings. They have hopia stores there. Hopia would be the winter-melon cakes, which are in abundance actually in Chinatown. They have different brands there. Of course, you have noodle dishes also. There are a lot of them. Pancit is very popular in the Philippines. It's a noodle dish, which you can find all over the Philippines. But of course, in every locality, there is a unique flavor to it. And Binondo has a lot of these noodle dishes. We call them Lumpia, so it's actually fresh spring rolls. You can also find those in Binondo. So there's so much to try out. I mean, just looking around, you'll get hungry. So much food.
And any warnings relative to Manila?
Just like any city, just keep your eyes on your belongings. Be alert. I mean, Manila is just like any other city. You still have petty crime. But of course, just keep an open mind and keep an open eye on your stuff, and you'll be fine.
Okay. And then anything else we should talk about in Manila that you had us heading south next?
If you want to see the business district, of course, it's Makati. In the evening, it comes alive because it's a place for everyone to party, the Makati area and the Fort area. So if you're a night person and you like meeting people, you go to Makati, you go to Fort, you go to Malate, which is also alive in the evening. So that's another aspect of Manila which I'm sure some travelers might enjoy.
Okay. You mentioned meeting people. Is there any trick in Manila that's one of the best ways to meet locals? I think of, if you're going to Turkey, you should learn to play backgammon. If you're going to Manila, you should what?
Unofficial national sport would be basketball. So
Basketball, okay.
yeah, every street corner has at least one basketball court, and it's a national pastime, if you may. So if you want to meet locals and if you want to have fun, you just do the sport. But of course, that's for a different crowd. If you want to meet more people, Filipinos are very friendly. So just strike up a conversation, and I'm sure that someone out there would be very warm and accommodating. Just don't look, how do I say it, just don't look scary.
I'm guessing at 6'4", I might have a little advantage in basketball if only I could do that layup shot, which I never learned how to do in gym, but okay. And then you had us moving south from Manila to where?
You can actually take a flight to the Visayas. There are several islands down south. The most famous destination would be Boracay Island. It's a very popular place for foreigners, actually, because of its powder white sand beach. But what makes it different from other beaches is that it has a very, very active nightlife scene, and actually it's a destination which is open 24 hours a day. I mean, you party in the evening, you eat in the evening, you just chill out and relax in the evening. During the daytime, enjoy the warm water and the white sand, so it's really a destination. But if you want a quiet beach, I suggest you go to either Palawan, Bohol, or to Cebu. Cebu is actually the second biggest city in the Philippines. It's actually the oldest because that's the first city established by the Spanish colonizers here in the Philippines. And there are a lot of nearby beach resorts, such as in Mactan Island, or if you're up to it, you can go up north of the island to Bantayan Island, which is very popular. They have a really good buffet there in Bantayan. In fact, when I was with a friend, he said that he'd come back to Bantayan just for that buffet because the buffet is just a little, I think, $5 or $6, and you had 50 dishes. Seafoods, pork, beef, chicken, everything, and it's just $6.
Okay. A couple questions. You mentioned, for instance, flying down someplace else.
Yeah.
How many islands, I know that the Philippines are a set of islands, how many islands are there total?
We have 7,107 islands.
So you have not been to all of them, I'm assuming, at this point.
No. I mentioned Bohol. That is a very beautiful island.
Mm-hmm.
Aside from the beaches, Bohol is very rich in colonial architecture. It has a lot of beautiful churches and really great attractions, especially the chocolate hills. That's one of the attractions which people visit in Bohol. Palawan is another quiet beach area known for its limestone cliffs. You can go to the underground river in Puerto Princesa or to Coron and El Nido up north. There's so much to see in central Philippines, actually.
Okay. And then you had talked about the warm waters. We're talking about a tropical destination.
Yes.
When should I come? Is the weather pretty much the same all the time? It's always beautiful, or?
You should avoid the rainy season. That would be between July and, say, October. But the rest of the year is sunny. Summer would be about from March to May. So this is the peak season for the locals as well. But we get a lot of foreigners even during the rainy season because that's, of course, the summer months in the United States. Especially in December during the winter months, we also get a lot of foreigners who want to enjoy the warm weather, warm relative to the winter areas. Because while December, January, and February may be the coldest months in the Philippines, it's still tropical country and we don't have snow, so you can still enjoy the beach during that time.
Okay. I don't remember what the next step was on your itinerary.
The jump-off point, the hub is actually Manila or Cebu. So if you want to go north of Manila, you're going to have to fly back to Manila.
Sure.
And take land transportation, for example, to the rice terraces. They're one of the UNESCO World Heritage Sites. They're very highly recommended. It's a very nice cultural experience. You get to hike along the rice terraces and see the ingenuity of the Filipinos who built it actually 2,000 years ago. So they're actually one of the most extensive, if not the most extensive in the world.
So these are the terraced rice paddies up the hillsides.
That's right.
Interesting.
In Ifugao, in the Cordillera mountain area.
Okay. Now, I'm also a big fan of history, and you'd mentioned a little bit about the occupation in World War II. Any place I should go if I wanted to see some of the history of that?
Of course, the best place to see that would be Corregidor Island.
Corregidor.
You can go there for a day. Ferries leave at about 8 in the morning from Manila, the CCT area. The package includes the tour around the island, transportation, as well as lunch. You usually get the package from Sun Cruises. It's a really nice experience. You get to see the remnants of the different gun batteries and the construction which happened in Corridor. I was told that they spent millions and millions and millions of dollars to build that island. It's a really important memorial, if you may, of the Second World War, what's left of it.
It was, I recall, the Gibraltar of the Pacific was what they called it at the time.
That's right. And of course, another memorial would be the Bataan area, but the only thing you'll see there is a cross on top of a mountain. You can actually take an elevator up the cross, but nothing much of the military warfare that they used in the area. It's really Corregidor Island, and the monuments are actually there. If you're also up to it, the biggest American war cemetery in the Pacific area, or I'm not sure outside the United States, is actually the one in Manila. That's where most of the American war dead are buried, those who died during the Second World War in the Pacific.
And one of the reasons I think have a particular interest in that is my next door neighbor growing up was a part of the California Nevada regiment that was at Bataan, that was at Corregidor, and was a part of what we now call the Bataan Death March. So, yeah,
Corregidor is very much worth the visit, and there are a lot of things to do there. In fact, you can stay overnight on the island. There is a hotel there, and if you do stay overnight, they can take you on a night exploration trip of the Malinta Tunnel in total darkness. So it's actually an experience, and if you stay on the island overnight, you can actually hike around to the different gun batteries and military structures, ruins of them, which are not usually seen during the regular tour, so you can actually do your own exploration and hike the different trails of the island.
Now, you've lived in Philippines all your life?
Yes, that's right.
What was the best day that you've had that really is one of the reasons why you love the Philippines?
Well, it's the heritage of the country. It's very unique. We're not the Asian type where you have the different temples and and what have you. It's a unique mix of East and West. The Philippines actually has beautiful colonial churches. I would like to say that the type of architecture is not found anywhere else in the world. We actually call it Philippine Baroque because the altars are actually folk art and the churches were built to withstand earthquakes. We have a lot of unique houses also. They're called bahay na bato or stone houses. Again, these houses are only found in the Philippines. When you're in the Philippines, you also have to try out the food. It's one reason I love traveling around the country. When Anthony Bourdain was here, I think last year, he was here for the first time, and just after tasting our lechon is what is our roast pig.
Oh, sure.
He said he changed the hierarchy of pork, and the Philippines is now number one on his list right now. So I tell you, each region in the Philippines has a unique cuisine. In fact, each region has its own language. You know?
Sure.
I can understand, for example, the language spoken down south. Each region is a unique mix of history, culture, food, architecture, and what have you. So when you explore the country, you'll actually see a lot of differences when you go around the different regions.
And speaking of language, how easy for someone who speaks predominantly English or English with a little Spanglish in there to get around?
Everyone in the Philippines speaks English. In fact, there are more English speakers in the Philippines than there are in England. We have the United States to thank for that. English is now part of the educational system, one of the two official languages, the other being Filipino. So you won't get lost. Just as long as you can speak English, you can get around the Philippines.
Excellent. What's your best money-saving tip for going to the Philippines?
The good thing about the Philippines is that your dollar or your euro will go a long way. Things are very cheap. Just remember, don't be too excited when you're in the country because you might overspend realizing that things are really, really cheap in the country. That's the reason why we have a lot of people who retire in the Philippines. For example, in the Clark area, which is a major hub right now, a low-cost hub. Most of the low-cost carriers land in Clark. We have a lot of pensioners in Clark, mostly from Australia. They spend their pension money there and live there because it's really cheap in the Philippines. It's actually one of the cheapest in Southeast Asia.
And that's the old U.S. Air Base.
Yes, that's right. It's the old U.S. Air Base, which has been converted into a free port, and it's most famous for the different leisure estates and golf courses. Most budget carriers do land in Clark, as I mentioned earlier. The area, the province of Pampanga in particular, is actually the culinary center of the Philippines. If you're a food fanatic, you can actually spend a week in Clark and just eat and eat and eat. Clark is also the jump-off point for the Mount Pinatubo treks. If you want to visit the volcano, you actually can stay in Clark.
And the last eruption of Mount Pinatubo was when? It was relatively recently.
Yes, it happened in 1991. The
91,
previous one was about 600 years before, and every time it explodes, it really explodes. So the area around the volcano was devastated, and that's one of the reasons why the Americans left immediately, because the entire Clark Air Force Base was destroyed by the eruption.
You had mentioned getting around, and you also mentioned low-cost carriers. You're flying around to get to various islands because of the distances. Are there local carriers that you're using generally that you recommend, or are these things that I would be able to find through?
Yeah, there are a good number of local carriers servicing particular destinations. Like for Boracay, the only carrier which goes straight to Caticlan Airport, which is beside Boracay, would be Sea Air. Cebu Pacific is our low-cost carrier, so they basically take you from Clark, Cebu, and Manila to the various local destinations. And Clark and Manila is an international hub for them, so they fly to other Southeast Asian and Asian countries from there. Of course, our main flag carrier is Philippine Airlines, and that would connect you to the United States and to other countries.
Okay. I'd like you to picture, if you would, the spot that you think is the most beautiful spot in the Philippines. The spot that if you're standing there looking out at this picture, you're thinking, thank God I grew up in the Philippines. Okay? What are you looking at?
That would be, It would be the mountains of the Cordilleras.
Okay.
I love hiking actually up the mountains of the Cordilleras. One of my favorite hikes is Mount Pulag. It's the highest mountain in the island of Luzon. When you're up there, you basically see the entire horizon and the beauty of the country, the natural beauty of the country is up there. When you're in the Cordilleras, you see the beauty of the rice terraces. You realize the effort which our forefathers was put into it, and it's really a beautiful image of the Philippines, the rice terraces. That's why I recommend to everyone that you visit the Cordillera area and the different attractions that you can see and explore when you're in the mountain range.
Excellent. As we go to wind this down, finish this sentence for me if you would. You really know you're in the Philippines when what?
You really know you're in the Philippines when you experience the warm hospitality of the people. You are able to experience its culture, its food. In particular, you experience unique vibe, if you may, unique mix of East and West. We're very, very, how they say, influenced by so many countries. You'll always feel at home when you're in the Philippines, even if you're traveling from another country. But of course, we have so many unique things here in the Philippines. But I would say that while you're traveling, you won't feel like a visitor because everyone's just warm and welcoming.
And you mentioned a little bit the shopping or a little bit the temptation with the dollar and the value of the dollar that I might buy too much. What is it that I'm going to end up getting charged extra from the airport because I couldn't stop putting it in my suitcase?
The dried mangoes.
The dried mangoes. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, the dried mangoes. Even in the airport, you can actually buy them. It's one of the things which foreigners buy a lot. Dried mangoes. They basically processed mangoes, really sweet delicacies and they last long because they're preserved. So it's something that you can fill up your suitcase with and stock up in your house and give out to friends when they ask you for a little something from the Philippines, and it's something that will really satisfy you. I assure you, get dried mangoes. Really good.
Okay. And then last question. If you had to summarize all of the Philippines, all 7,000 islands, in 3 words, what 3 words would you use?
Beautiful Pacific paradise.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show. Our guest, again, has been Ivan Hernares. And Ivan, you have a blog. Why don't you give us the URL for that?
Yeah, my URL would be www.ivanhernares.com. IvanHernares.com.
And I'll put a link to that in the show notes at amateurtraveler.com. Ivan, thanks so much for coming on and sharing your obvious love for your country.
Thank you very much, Chris, and I hope that you do get to visit our country as well.
I have one internet resource for you today, and that is a service called MissRefund, MissRefund.com, and that is a site where if you can't take a trip but you have a non-refundable ticket, they can at least get you back the airport fees and taxes on that ticket. So check that out, MissRefund.com. I got an email from Lyndon in the UK that says, I was catching up on some old podcast episodes recently while I was on vacation in the French Alps, and I happened to play episode 146 about the Isle of Dominica. You featured a news item about a family who were sent to the wrong airport, Turkey instead of their intended destination of Lanzarote, an important item which deserved to be heard, but at the end, I was appalled to hear you say the error occurred when they were given the wrong boarding cards at the airport in Cardiff, England. Appalled, that is, to hear someone who is such a seasoned traveler make such a fundamental mistake. Cardiff is not, and has never been, in England. Cardiff is in Wales. Indeed, it is the capital of Wales. Wales and England are separate countries, administratively within the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. The word England and Britain are not interchangeable in meaning. This is not just idle semantics. When you refer to Cardiff as being in England, you perpetuate a centuries-old myth that England is in some way superior to Wales. It is an affront to Wales and an affront to the people of Wales, all 3.3 million of us. Lyndon, I apologize. I know better. I will say that as a Yank, I do occasionally have some confusion about the fact that there is a Britain and England, a Great Britain and a UK, and how they all map together. And Although I know that Cardiff is in Wales, I did screw that up, and my apologies. Joanne wrote about last week's Wisconsin episode and said, "Thank you for featuring Wisconsin in your 200th episode. Christine did a great job of highlighting the best parts of this state where I have lived most of my life. But there are a few things I would like to add." She mentioned State Street in Madison, the pedestrian-only street that connects the Capitol Square to the UW campus. One of the reasons I love State Street is that you can easily find throwbacks to the 1960s as you stroll along. If you are looking for a poster of Bobby Kennedy, Beatles albums on vinyl, tie-dyed clothing, incense, beaded curtains, or a rally to legalize pot or end the war, any war, State Street is the place. Also, State Street has a colorful street life not unlike New York City. In warm weather, merchants put racks outside, restaurants put tables outside, and the sidewalks are jammed. Even in cold weather, because of the high population density in the campus area and too few parking places, there is always a lot of pedestrian activity on State Street. About Door County, Christine missed mentioning the 10 lighthouses, more than any county in the country. Most in service, some not anymore, some open to the public and some not, but every one is picturesque. Lastly, she mentioned the Lake Michigan beaches from Milwaukee up to Door County. One should not mention Lake Michigan beaches without mentioning the water temperatures, which range from still frigid in June, very cold in July, and merely cold on the hottest day in August. Swimming in any part of the Great Lakes is not for the timid. Lastly, the colors of fall rivals the much better known colors of New England. And I have lived there too, so I can compare. Thanks for all your hard work. I love the podcasts, whether they are about the most exotic corners of the world or my home state, Joanne. With that, we will bring this episode of The Amateur Traveler to a close. Feel free to leave a comment at amateurtraveler.com with your additions to what we left out in this episode or any episode, or drop me an email as both Lyndon and Joanne did at host@amateurtraveler.com. And don't forget to follow me on Twitter at twitter.com/Chris2X. And as always, thanks so much for listening.